recording right now. So we're recording, and then stop videos.
So I'm Jenna, and this is it's a hobby farm because we don't have a full-blown farm. I call it my zoo. These are my alpacas, and yes, they are full-grown. Fizgig here is about 2.5, and Kira is about 2. Or no, Fizgig, you're almost 3 now, aren't you? So Fizgig's almost 3. Kira's 2. Kira would still be considered a maiden. You wouldn't want to breed her yet. Fizgig is fixed, so he will not breed her because they are possibly siblings. We're not entirely sure of their heritage. Most alpacas that you buy will have a pedigree. These guys do not have a pedigree, so they are considered pet quality, although their fiber is spinnable. My cousin did spin some of Kira's fiber from last year. These guys have not yet been sheared this year. They will get sheared in about June when it's not so cold. But they've got about you gonna come here? About 2 inches of fiber on them right now. Fizgig here is making a funny face because his jaw is actually numb because he was fighting with Kira, and he spit at her so much that he literally can't close his mouth. Alpacas spit when they're fighting as a defense mechanism. They are on high alert because the outdoor cat is outside and they think she's a threat. She's really not. Alpaca costs, they can range in costs from about $500 upward to $3,000 depending on their pedigree. These guys were actually free due to having no pedigree, so I would not be able to breed them anyways for any valuable animals. I wanted alpacas as a pet. They get sheared kind of like sheep, except they're not as docile as sheep. You actually have to tie alpacas down. They really don't enjoy the process, but I do use the same shearers as a sheep shearer, and it comes off similar. I sheared them myself. You can hire people to shear your alpacas, but unfortunately there's not that many that come this far up north in northern Wisconsin. And given that their fiber isn't pedigreed, it's not really worth it for me to have somebody come up and shear them. So I'm going to learn to do it myself. I'm going to learn to card it myself and spin it myself. And Fizgig, you're drooling. Fizgig is doing what's called humming. He's going to spit at the camera again. Hey! Could you not? He's mildly concerned about the cat right now, but he can't even close his mouth because he was fighting so bad. Yeah. You gonna spit at the camera again? Thanks, dude. Don't bite the camera. Stop. So he's on high alert right now. So what he's trying to do is come up and spit at me, and he's taken an interest in the camera today and is trying to bite the camera. Not entirely sure why he's trying to bite the camera. You got lens, disgusting. Here Kira is defending her food, which Fizgig can't eat anyways. These guys are not, hey, stop biting my phone. They're not behaving today. But they're not halter trained yet. We're still working on that. When I got them about a year ago, they had never been halter trained or worked with at all due to their owner having health issues. So, yeah. You were so curious about the camera today. You guys got in a good fight, didn't you? Alpacas are native to South America. There are no wild alpacas. They were bred over 1,000 years ago for their fiber. Some alpacas will show, I don't know if it's loyalty or if it's just that they know you have food. These guys will come when I call, when they're not fighting. They come up for food, for water. On a good day, they'll let me touch them. Today is not a good day because something's got Fizgig wild. Why are you biting the camera today? The noise you hear Fizgig making is called humming. It's what alpacas use to communicate. His hum means he's a little bit concerned. He's a little bit upset. probably because of his fight with Kira. In most cases, the male would dominate the herd. In my case, this little lady bosses him around. He's got about 50 pounds on her, stands about 2 inches taller. She shoves him around like there's nothing there. Kira's my little piggy.
Can you show us what their habit, their winter home looks like? Their shelter?
It is basically just a carport. I've got a feeder in there, and I've got hay in there. But due to their fiber, they don't need a whole lot of protection. They just need protection from the wind. And then they've got it's about a quarter of an acre. It goes out this way and then goes to the left there. They'll graze on it this summer. Alpacas poop in a community pile, and that's what this is because it has not yet been cleaned up. That was theirs from this winter. It was still frozen last weekend, so hopefully it's thawed now. Makes it very easy to clean up after them, and alpaca manure can actually be spread directly in your garden. You don't need to age it at all. It makes a great fertilizer since they are ruminants, meaning they have a parted stomach, means they chew their cud and they'll swallow it like cows do. Makes for very well processed manure. And they eat a good quality hay and this pellet food that I have in the bucket. Fizz, you are just in a mood today. My goodness. Are you trying to be the star of the show? And this is just now alpaca llama supplement pellets. Provides anything that they might be missing from grazing and hay. I also supplement shredded beet pulp to help them in the wintertime because they do burn a lot of calories staying warm. You usually have to worry about alpacas being too warm rather than too cold. Is you gonna do your alert noise? Huh?
Do they drink a lot of water?
These guys in the winter, they were drinking about 3 to 4 gallons a day between what they drank and what evaporated. In the summertime, they'll go through about 10 gallons a day between the two of them when it's really hot, between obviously what they drink and what evaporates. I got a 16-gallon waterer that I fill up every day to make sure they've got fresh water. When it gets really hot, I take a hose and spray off their legs and their belly so that they can cool down. And as you can see, they've got split toes. And that's actually because they are from a mountainous region, and that helps them get grip. Their toenails do keep growing just like humans. Kira's here, you can see, need to be cut, and that'll be done next month. Hers are actually really, really bad. Fizgigs are not nearly as bad. Yeah? Stop eating the phone!
So do you have to do that yourself?
My neighbor actually helped me do it last year. So she showed me how to do it. So I'll be doing that, but well, not by myself. I have a bunch of people that want to come help shear the alpacas. Come here, man. You're not going to bite me, are you? You're being just a crappy butt.
So do they feel fuzzy like a dog, or what do they feel like?
They're softer than dogs. Come here. I'm trying to show you his teeth. They only have bottom teeth. They don't have top teeth. They're softer than dogs. They're more like plush-like. They're also a lot dirtier than dogs because they like to roll in the sand. Come here, Kira. She's like, don't touch me. But it's not like silky soft until you get it combed out in that. Then it turns into more of a fluffy silk. Fizz, you did it to yourself.
There was a question or comment in the chat. Katie had said, when a horse's ears are laid back, it generally means they're agitated. Is this the same for alpacas?
Yes, it is. As you can see, he's putting his ears back. He's taking offense to the camera today. That's why he's trying to bite me too. And Kira She's not quite sure, but she's a little bit, don't you dare. You can see she puts her ears forward. She's eating her food. She's happy. He'll put his ears forward when he's curious, but then he keeps putting it back. He's just not in a good mood today. Yeah? You gonna hum us a tune?
Do they ever lay down?
Yes, they do. Their front knees lay down normally. Their back legs actually go backwards. So when they lay down, they kind of look like little packs of fur. And then they'll often stretch their necks out in the sun and look like they're dead. So you walk up and you freak out and think they're dead, and they're just sunbathing.
And how hard is it to train them?
These guys are kind of hard because I got them as adults. Usually you start with training when they're little, when they're crias. What? You got your sister's fur in your mouth. What the heck? And you would start halter training them, preferably with a mom that's already halter trained, so that she would show the baby how things go. So far this year, I've managed to get them where they'll stand here with me, which is a big improvement to when I first got them. They would not stand by me at all. Granted, it's with food bribery, but I can capture them fairly easy by myself and get their halters on. They are not yet used to it, but they don't object nearly as bad as they used to. We're still working on walking on the halters.
There was a couple of other questions in the chat. One is, are there certain diseases that affect them?
Yes, actually, here in northern Wisconsin, they are very susceptible to the meningeal worm, which is a parasite that is passed from white-tailed deer into ticks, which somehow get into slugs. I'm not entirely clear about how that gets in there, but it breeds in the slug's stomach and is excreted with the slugs and their slime trail. So if these guys eat anything that a slug passed over, they can pick up the M worm. It causes paralysis and eventually death in alpacas. So they get a monthly shot of ivermectin not to prevent it, because there's no way to prevent it, but to actually kill any of the parasites so that they do pick up. And because we are in northern Wisconsin and I have a high white-tailed deer population, I give it to them year round. Some people stop in midwinter because there's snow on the ground, but I have deer that wander through my yard. I figure we don't want to risk it. It is treatable. It's not a immediate death, but it's expensive and painful to treat, and they often still have joint problems after it.
And then Shirley asked if you sell the wool.
I haven't yet, mostly because I've only had them for one shearing. I still have their unprocessed fiber in my house right now. I want to learn to card it and spin it and eventually knit with it, but haven't gotten to that point yet. Alpacas will pay for themselves for their feed in that if you have a good quality fiber, but you need to process it yourself and make it into like hats and mittens and gloves for it to really pay for itself. The raw fiber isn't worth a whole lot because you really need to get all of this dirt and that you can see, especially on Kira. All of that has to be hand picked out, and then it has to be carded, and the guard hairs have to be removed. You have to then usually hand spin it. It's not really good for any sort of machine processing. It's too fine. What's up, dude?
Another question is, are any of your local vets able to treat them?
Yes, actually, I have a local vet down in Rhinelander who came up and did Fizgig's castration. He's familiarizing himself with alpacas, and he does do large animal veterinary services, so he is our go-to, and he's been very excited to work with the alpacas and been an awesome vet to work with.
Are there very many alpacas in Wisconsin?
There are two main farms that I know of in northern Wisconsin. I think there are more in southern Wisconsin. There's actually one over by Eau Claire, and there's one over by Hayward. I've talked with both of them. One is actually been helping me with questions I had about raising alpacas. So a lot of people have them just kind of as an addition to having other animals. What's up? Oh boy. Hi, Dylan. This would be my neighbor's horse. He's not supposed to be out. Hey, Dylan, come here.
He must want to
Dylan.
join the show.
He's not supposed to be out. No, he's not supposed to be out. Come on, Dylan. So we're going to take a detour here. Come on, boy.
Bonus, we get to see a horse.
Come on. What's your problem? Huh? Come on, Dylan. Come on, boy, let's go home. That moment when you find a horse in your front yard. Oh no, and the pony's out.
Oh.
Hey, Lizzie.
You couldn't have planned this.
Well then. Well, this is my neighbor's pony. This is Lizzie. She's a fractious little thing. Come on, Lizzie. Come on, baby girl. The big boy is Dylan. Oh. Hey, Linda, they're in my front yard. Come on, guys. Let's go home. Alpacas can get along with horses and that. You don't really want to keep them with goats or sheep because of issues with parasites. Mine do not like my cat, my outdoor cat. Hey, Linda! They're over here in my front yard. And they're coming over to visit the alpacas.
Do they do this often?
Huh?
Do they do this very often?
Nope, this is the first time Dylan's been over here. Lizzie's gotten in my backyard before, but I'm mostly just trying to keep them from going out in the highway. Yep, they're over here. They're saying hi to the alpacas.
I think animals are just drawn to you, Jenna.
As you can see, the alpacas are now very curious. Not sure what's going on here. They found some good grass over here.
Katie says everyone wants their 5 minutes of fame.
Apparently. We're doing a Zoom farm tour and your horses decided to come star in it.
Dylan, look what I got. Come on, buddy.
I guess the grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yep.
Pretty horses. Any idea how old they are?
I believe Dylan's what, 17?
Yeah.
And how old is Lizzie?
9.
Okay.
Come on. I did it myself. I left the gate wide open.
Oh no.
Well, I had them in the other pack. Until I got in there myself.
She's taking the long way home, apparently. Where you going, Liz? Now my chickens are awake.
The alpacas are probably like, what was that?
Yeah, they're like, those things are big.
So I
Right,
don't,
guys?
Jenna, I don't know which, oh, cute. I hear the chickens.
Yep.
So who are you planning to show us next?
Oh, oops, what did I do? There you go. Well, who does everybody want to meet?
I would have to say probably the hedgehog. But actually, this crew might not know what all you have.
Hi, kitten. Well, I've got the hedgehog, bearded dragons, the fish tanks, the axolotl, the snakes. You guys okay back here? They're like, what was that big thing? That's the chickens. Going, what the heck, man? Well, the chickens, the cats.
I vote for the hedgehog. Katie votes hedgehog and snakes. Good choice,
Snakes
Katie.
are always. Okay. Come here, Sir Quillington. Ah. There you go. So this is Sir Quillington. You got stuff on your head. He is an African pygmy hedgehog. He's being a spiky bit because there's a cat over here trying to find out what's going on. There you go, bud. You know, popcorn? They will curl up into balls to defend themselves. And their spikes are a little bit spiky, but they're not barbed. But if you flip them over, their bellies are really, really soft. It's like, stop flipping me over. He is about 2 years old. And African pygmy hedgehogs are actually a crossbreed between northern African hedgehogs and a four-toed hedgehog. These are not at all related to the European hedgehogs, which are about 3 times their size. Hedgehogs are omnivores. I've not raised this one from a baby. This one is also a rescue. Most of my animals are rescues, or like I call them, second hands. I've only ever had adult hedgehogs. I've seen hoglets, hedgehog babies, and they are absolutely adorable. And hedgehogs, you need to handle them a lot, otherwise they become very antisocial. So I take him out for at least an hour a day. If he's not playing on me, I have a little pouch that he'll sit in just so that he gets used to hearing me, and I'll carry him around. And as you can see, he's fairly social. He's trying to figure out why we're up this time of day. He's like, it's not dark out. Hedgehogs will curl up in a ball as a defense mechanism. It's hard to get him to do it because he never wants. There you go. So he could actually tuck his nose in there totally, if he wanted to. This little reverse mohawk they have is actually also part of their defense. They can move their spikes so they point up and at whatever they're attacking, and so they can then bop their head. I call it popcorning, so that these spikes will stab. They don't stick, though. Katie, I have not yet, but I would be willing to look into that. That would be kind of cool. This is actually my first time doing a public presentation of my animals, so we're kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. I do work with a couple of coworkers that are working on educational programs regarding snakes and that, to get people to realize that snakes aren't all that bad.
I forgot to mention that you work at the Northwoods pet store, right?
Yep, Northwoods Pets over in Rhinelander. One interesting thing that hedgehogs do is called anointing, and they will lick something that they feel is poisonous, which could be anything from something actually poisonous to even Fruit Loops, and then they will mix that in with their saliva and spread it on their quills. And that way, when they do that popcorning thing, they will get this substance on their attacker and hopefully poison them. They're not immune to poisons, they're just able to process it differently. What are you thinking, dude? He's like, I'm kind of hungry.
What do they eat?
They're omnivores. So in the wild, they're actually insectivores. They will eat mostly insects, some plant matter, but not a whole lot. As a captive bred one, he actually eats a high quality hedgehog diet mixed with some cat food, because he likes to run a lot. So as you can see right here, he's a little bit thin. That's because he exercises more than he takes in calories. What? This is not the time or place for that, dude.
Do you have a vet in the area that can treat your hedgehog?
I actually haven't had to take this one to the veterinarian, and so I haven't really looked for a vet yet, but I know there is another one in Rhinelander that has been looking into exotics and small animals, and I'd be confident calling her if I needed any help with him. I also have a vet that's based out of Madison that I talk to, and he does teleconferences for most of my exotics. Prior to the Northwoods getting vets that were interested in small mammals and exotics. So if there's anything beyond the regular scope of things, then I would contact him.
Katie asks, how big will he get?
He is actually full grown. So he is on the smaller side for hedgehogs, partially due to when he was a baby, the people that owned him at that point didn't feed him the best diet. So he is a bit stunted. I had one that was about twice his size. So it does vary from hedgehog to hedgehog. He's actually called a piebald coloring. He's got the two different ears and the kind of varied coloring in here. He would not be accepted by the American hedgehog standards due to his too much varied coloring, but I think he's sweet. You were just awake and now wandering. This is my calico cat, very interested in the hedgehog that we have now brought out. Their natural habitats are actually a desert. The North African pygmy hedgehogs would live in the desert, and actually they will go into a form of hibernation if they get too cold. So you do need to keep them warmer than most households are kept. So he actually has a ceramic heat emitter on him so that he stays warm, just in case my house gets too cold. He can move around and get out of the way if he needs to. And you're just pooping all over my carpet right now, aren't you? Thanks, dude.
What other natural predators in the wild?
Just about anything would eat a hedgehog. Their spikes kind of make it a good defense system. They are also considered a delicacy by humans. Humans will actually bake them in clay and eat them, because when you peel the clay off, then you have baked hedgehog. Here he is stealing the cat's food, because apparently that's better than his food.
I think Katie is saying ew to the eating of a hedgehog, I'm assuming.
I mean, I've got a good recipe if anybody's interested. I haven't personally tried it, but
Now how 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 long will they live in captivity?
your pygmy hedgehogs live 3 to 5 years. They do have a lot of health issues due to a lot of inbreeding that was happening in the 90s, and that when they started gaining popularity. There's a better breeding program now, so most breeders screen for a lot of the diseases they would get, so they are living a little bit on the longer side. My personal longest living hedgehog was my last one, Patsy. She lived to 6. Most common defect that you get in the pet trade is something called wobbly hedgehog syndrome. It's not something you can prevent or treat. It is a genetic disorder similar to kind of like Parkinson's in humans. They lose the ability to walk on one side, they'll lose the ability to chew, but there's no way to diagnose it until after they're dead and you do an autopsy. And then you can determine what it was. So it's really hard to tell, and that will affect them either when they're under a year or over 2 years. And I did deal with one hedgehog that had that. Did you get your fuel to go? So hedgehogs are nocturnal. So he's kind of confused as to why he's up right now, but he's a good sport. He runs about 4 to 5 hours at night, and he'll run, stop, take a drink, take a snack, go back to running. He runs more than most of my other hedgehogs. Most of them only mildly enjoy the wheel. I think he lives for the wheel. Hey!
Can you show us what his little house looks like?
It's a mess, but we had a party last night. So this is a smaller than standard cage that you would use for a hedgehog. Normally you would want a larger cage than this. However, my outdoor cat has made this cage necessary because she likes to bop the hedgehog a lot. So this is clean yesterday. This is what he did to the cage last night. This is what he does to his cage every night. So he's got a nice large wheel to run on. He will poop on his wheel all night long. So it gets cleaned daily. This cage gets cleaned daily. I just did not get to it yet today. This is actually his heat. That's a ceramic heat emitter. It doesn't do any light, but you can feel the heat. He prefers to drink from a water bottle, but I put a bowl down here because the water bottle does drip on him. And then he'll drink from that a little bit. This is his little snuggle hut that he likes to sleep in, but he'll sleep on anything and do a lot of liner diving. I put fleece down here for him and then have shredded paper in that underneath his wheel. As you can see, it doesn't do a whole lot, but and he's got his toys. He doesn't chew on these so much as he just drags them around and throws them around. Hedgehogs are solitary creatures. You don't want to keep them with another hedgehog. They really won't get along with another hedgehog. People often talk about breeding hedgehogs, and you do have to be careful because you have to breed them by a certain age. Otherwise, they will die in childbirth. You can't keep the male with the female because she will then eat the babies or the male will attack them. Come here, baby. He is trying to hide under my legs because he says it's bedtime.
Can you show us a snake today?
Sure. Let's put the hedgehog away. And one thing to remember when you have animals, wash your hands. Wash your hands a lot. In this case, we're washing our hands because I was just handling a prey animal, and I'm now going to get out a snake. And if you handle a prey animal and then handle a snake, you're going to try to get bitten. So I got my corn snake out earlier since he was being a bit of a sass. Come here, buddy. So this is Phoenix. He is also one that I took in. He is an American corn snake. They are native to southern North America, so like Georgia and that. He's a variety of a rat snake. He's actually what's called an amel, which means he's an albino. And corn snakes are a variety of rat snakes. They're often mistaken for copperheads down south when they're in their normal coloring. Since he's bright orange, he wouldn't be natural at all. He is about 5 foot long and about, 2.5 years old or so. He was surrendered by his original owner because he bit him a lot. I have never been bit by him. I have no issues holding him. He does not really like coming out of his cage sometimes, but corn snakes are very curious. They like to look around a lot. His coloring is actually a little bit dull because he's getting ready to go into shed, so he's normally brighter than this. Come here, baby. As with any animal, you watch their body language to see what their mood is. He's being curious right now. He's stretched out, he's flicking his tongue. But he also knows me and he knows I'm not going to hurt him. His primary diet is large mice. Yeah, actually his eyes were opaque just a couple of days ago and he could not see at all. So I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to take him out because when their eyes are opaque, they can't see you and they get stressed out if you hold them because they're not quite sure what's going on. That's called going blue. After they go blue, they go clear again like this. I expect within 2-3 days he will do a nice, beautiful full shed like he has for me before. He does absolutely beautiful sheds. And he's actually grown almost 2 inches since I got him in January, which he's supposed to be a full-grown adult, but there's another one that's a little bit stunted due to their early care. You're just tying yourself in knots here, dude.
How long is he?
He is almost 5 foot long. He does not look at all curled up like this. But we measured his last shed, and his last shed was actually 61 inches long. It does stretch a bit when they shed, so I estimate he's just about 5 feet. And most corn snakes will get 5 to 6 feet and live 10 to 15 years, possibly longer. I call him my gorgeous boy. He likes to go exploring. He likes to see what's going on. I have a blood python that would prefer to just sit and watch TV. He's actually behaving today, Katie. He normally doesn't want to hold still. I know Stacy and I tried this the other day, and I could barely hang on to him. So he's being good today. But if anybody is looking at getting a snake for a pet, corn snakes are excellent beginner snakes. They don't require a lot of, specialized setup. They don't require a huge tank. They do require heating and that sort of stuff, and you do need to feed them mice. You don't need to feed them live mice. I feed him frozen ones. But if you're looking at getting a snake, I would definitely suggest looking into getting a corn snake. They have great personalities. And even as you can see, he's getting ready to shed, but he is just a gorgeous color. He actually did have an injury, which is one of the reasons that I have him. You can see right here. Now your head's in the way. Right there next to his neck, you can see that slight bump on him. All right, next to my pinky. I believe that he actually got injured there. He doesn't have a great time bending it, and it is a little bit more lumpy, which usually means that there was some sort of break on either in his ribs or on his back. But he's fully recovered. He has no issues with it. I'm just a little bit careful when I'm holding him right there, just so that we don't re-injure that. I don't know how it happened. When he was surrendered, I was never told how it happened, but their defense mechanism is to bite. If you were to startle them, they will strike at you. It doesn't hurt a whole lot. As you can see, their heads are rather small, but they would strike. And his first name was actually Striker, because he was not a friendly snake. And again, I think that's a lot due to how you keep them and how you hold them. I firmly believe just about anything can be calmed down with the right sort of holding and right sort of care. So he went from being called Striker and being rehomed due to being unholdable, unfeedable, and very cage defensive. I decided when I got him to rename him Phoenix, because I didn't want to give him a negative name. He has not struck at me once. He doesn't always want to come out of his cage, but he doesn't strike at me when I go into his cage. He eats very well, and his prey is the only thing that I've ever seen him strike at. They are constrictors, so when he does take his mouse, he will wrap himself around it, even though it's already dead. Nobody told him that it's already dead, so. Right? You being my curious boy? So a lot of people think when they're doing this S curve that means they're being defensive. It can mean they're being defensive. It also can just mean that they're controlling their body. So you really got to watch their body language, since the snakes don't really make noises like mammals do. He gets a mouse about every 10 days or so. He gets a large mouse. If you overfeed a snake, they will get fat. So I kind of watch him. So it's about 7 to 10 days right now since he does start acting hungry. He's actually due to be fed this Sunday. So he was a little bit squirrely when I took him out, going, "Are you feeding me?" As he gets older, that'll get stretched out to every 2 weeks when he stops growing. But because he still shows sign that he's growing, I'm going to keep feeding him so that he can keep growing. What you want to watch for in obesity in snakes is you want to make sure that you can still see the defined spine of the snake. Snakes that get fat, you can no longer see that, and you can actually see an indent where their spine is. So that line you see running down the middle of his back is his spine, and he is in a very good shape. Where are you going, man?
Does he have to be kept separate from the other snake?
Yes, they actually require 2 different environments. My blood python requires 82 degrees and a humidity point of 60 to 70%. He requires a similar heat. I keep him at about 75 is where he seems to be happy with. The hot spot gets up to 80, but he does not need that high of humidity. He will actually get a respiratory infection if you keep him in that type of humidity. Corn snakes, you can cohabit. I have never done it. This is actually my first corn snake, but you would be able to keep 2 corn snakes together, depending on their temperament and that. They don't really need companionship. Snakes and lizards don't really have that part of their brain that requires them to have that companionship, but if you wanted to, you could keep them together. Where you going, man?
Do you have time to show us Zelda?
Yeah. Let's get him down. Come on. He has told me he is. There you go. So first I'll show you your tank. This is actually Zelda's tank. This is a 75-gallon aquarium. So it's 4 foot long, about around what, 1.5 foot deep. This is Zelda herself. Katie, I have wanted alpacas since I was 16, and I have always loved lizards. I actually didn't know if I wanted snakes till my kid got one. And then I fell in love with his blood python. Kind of fell into the job at Northwoods Pets, and I just love animals. My first job was working at a vet clinic. So this is Zelda. I call her my old lady. One thing you should know, Zelda is actually a boy. When I got her, she was being sold because her owner was upset that she wouldn't breed. Well, she wouldn't breed because she was a boy. I didn't find that out till about 2 years later. But we kept the name Zelda and we keep calling her she, so we have a little bit of a gender identity here. I don't think she cares. She's a bearded dragon. Bearded dragons are native to Africa, Australia. Oi. She's about 2 foot long, all the way to her tail. She is 9 years old. Bearded dragon's average lifespan in captivity is about 10 years. So that's why we call her the old lady. And because she is so old, she is losing some of her muscle mass in here. You can see where she's a little bit thinner, a little bit wrinklier. Most of that is just due to her ancient wisdom, right? Bearded dragons, even in the wild, have been known to approach humans. They are not really afraid of humans. They're more curious than anything else. As juveniles, they primarily eat insects with a little bit of vegetation. As adults, they eat mostly vegetation with just a few insects. Zelda is actually a little bit of a picky eater and really only likes hornworms and superworms. Given that she's an old lady, we let her get away with it. And they're called bearded dragons because this part here, they will actually flare out and it will turn black. That is one of their warnings that they give to other bearded dragons. They are territorial. I have 2 bearded dragons. I have to keep them in separate parts of the house because when they see each other, they both get upset. Zelda actually will blackbeard at Spyro when she sees him. She hasn't attacked him, but I don't really want to take that risk. They do have a little bit of teeth in here. You want to open your mouth? She's like, no. That can hurt if they bite. They can do damage to each other. I do keep her nails clipped so hers aren't too sharp, but if they weren't, they do get sharp and they do scratch. Sparrows are clipped too. It doesn't hurt them to clip it. It's just like clipping your fingernails, just like clipping your dog's fingernails. You don't clip too far back. Zelda has gone to the 4th of July parade in Three Lakes. She's gone to various outdoor events in Three Lakes. She actually has Halloween costumes because she's so laid back and she lets me do just about anything to her. If you're looking at a first-time pet and you're looking at lizards, I would highly recommend bearded dragons. They are very sturdy, as you can see. And if you've got a kid that wants to hold them, they're nice and sturdy as adults. They don't mind being held. They don't mind being moved around. Once you have their cage set up properly, they're actually relatively easy to care for. The worst thing about beardies is they do poop, and it can be nasty. Zelda here, she is a dainty little lady. She will only poop in her bath, so it's not too bad. Spyro trashes his tank on a daily basis. But they do like to just hang out with you and sit with you, and as you can see, she's the one that's behaving today. Nobody else was behaving today.
So I've been getting requests. My sister is watching, and she wants to know about the axolotl, or however you pronounce that.
Axolotl?
Yes.
Yeah, my beardie actually, you don't want to leave them alone with anybody else, but my cats don't bother the beardie. I have them on my shoulder. I have one cat that likes to try to bite his tail, but other than that, they're not too aggressive. This here is Xander, my axolotl. Axolotls are native to Central America near Mexico. They're also known as the Mexican walking fish. They are a species of salamander, but they stay in aquatic, so they're amphibians. He is not even a year old yet, and you can see how large he is, about as big as my hand. They are very puppy-like. He will come up and beg no matter how much you feed him. I have him in a 20 long tank, so he's got plenty of swimming room. Ignore the green down there. That's because I had my grow lights going and I didn't even realize it was hitting them. They are actually endangered in the wild due to their habitat being taken over by cities and the water being polluted. He was captive bred, and I say he loosely because I'm not entirely sure if he's a male or female. I've not asked him or looked. But they are very popular as pets. The ones you would get at a pet store would be captive bred. They would not be wild caught. He is what is known as an albino GFP, which is the glow fluorescent protein. They're actually used in a lot of, not medical tests because they don't test on them, but they do research on their genes because they can regenerate their limbs in that if they're lost. And they actually use the glow protein to trace the genes. So that's actually been bred into them. He would glow under black light. It's kind of hard to show in the daylight, but you can kind of see on his tail here where there's a slight greenish tinge. The albino glow protein ones are a bit rarer, but not super rare. Most of the ones you find in the pet trade are the leucistic, which means they have the dark eyes with the glow protein. And again, the glow protein was just introduced into them so that you could trace their genes. They don't experiment on the animals themselves. They do need to live in cooler water, so there is no heater on here. They do need to have a good filter because they need to have very clear water. So like I said, the green, that developed in the last 2 days because I put my grow light there. He eats mostly earthworms. He can also eat bloodworms. I could introduce bugs to him, but he's shown no interest in any of the bugs I've given him. He really likes the angleworms I give him. He's a bit on the chubby side for an axolotl, but that's because I kind of overfed him as a baby. I have had him since he was tiny. Xander, you're not being very friendly here. Zelda, you need to hang on. Darcy, yeah, he could get a little bit bigger. They can be anywhere from 8 to 12 inches, depending on what kind they are, what breeding they've had. I've seen ones that are 10 inches and they are monsters. I'm hoping he doesn't get a whole lot bigger because I'm gonna have to get him a bigger tank if he does. They are actually nearsighted. So before I moved him to this tank, he was in a smaller tank and he would run into the sides because he can't see. They're nearsighted. Normally, the albinos actually have worse eyesight than the regular ones. So he was having a really hard time swimming. We moved him to the bigger tank and he swam and ran into the wall again. Zelda is checking out.
Can Sauron and Zelda be near each other?
No. I can take Sauron out, but we need to put Zelda back. Zelda thinks that Sauron is a snack. He is a smaller lizard. Bearded dragons will eat smaller lizards. So again, it's about knowing the animals and just knowing their instincts. You don't want to have anybody that thinks anybody else is a snack. Hang on. Dude, chill. Are we chill? We are not chill. We are so not chill. So going along with the theme of nothing is behaving today, this is Sauron. He is a crested gecko, also known as an eyelash gecko. There we go. They eat primarily fruit and insects in the wild. Come on, focus. They do not have eyelids. So one of the ways they clean their eyes is by licking them. They primarily live in trees. And up until 1994, they were thought to be extinct in the wild. Most of them in the pet trade now are captive bred. They're actually relatively easy to breed. And they make great pets if you don't want something that you want to hold a lot. They're not hard to take care of. They don't require a whole lot of heat or light, but they can be very jumpy. Sauron I actually got as a full-grown adult. The babies are a little bit fragiler. And when we first held him, we had to hold him in the bathroom because he would jump out of our hands and go climbing up the walls. If you can see their feet, they actually can climb glass. They have ridges on their toes that allows them to grip. It's kind of like your fingerprints, but if your fingerprints would move. He is just a normal green. He's not anything fancy. He's a little bit mad at me, so he's a little bit darker. Normally he'd be the color of where his head is. This would be another good first lizard, as they don't require a whole lot of care or specialized care, and they don't eat a whole lot of live insects. They do eat, like he likes crickets. He's tried superworms. He didn't really like them. But he also eats a complete meal replacement food that he really likes the mulberry flavor. The only downside to Cresties is they don't always want to just sit and chill with you. He's sitting here thinking about jumping at the camera because that's his favorite thing to do.
He looks so cute today.
You missed me getting him out where he decided to try to take off 20 times.
I remember when he was climbing all over Adler.
Yep, they will try to get to the highest point, and they are fast, and they can escape if you don't have a good enclosure for them. He will actually, his enclosure is going to be getting upgraded. I'm going to work on what's called a bioactive enclosure. So there will be a form of substrate on the bottom with isopods and that to break down any wastes and keep the humidity up. and it will be larger for him. He can live to about 10 to 15 years. He is only about 3, I believe. Are you 3 now, man? Because I've had you for 2 years. You're about a year when I got you. And they definitely have personalities. They look really, really derpy.
Well, I feel like since you're showing us everybody, you should probably show us the other snake too.
Go ahead, Sarah. Hey, derp. Well, I'll leave you guys watching Xander for a minute while I grab Zephyr. Okay. This is my blood python, also known as a short tail. It's because their tails are short and stubby. I believe she's Sumatran, but I'm not entirely sure. I got her about a year ago. So she's about 2 years old now. She's not at all full grown. She won't be full grown until she's about 5 or 6. When she's full grown, she'll be about 6 feet or so and weigh around 30 pounds. Right now, she's just shy of 3 foot. As a blood python, she does have very specific requirements that she needs. She needs the high humidity and the high heat. Her cage is 4 foot by 2 foot. So it's a very large cage for when she gets bigger. Her current favorite thing to do is sleep in a dog bowl that has moss in it. So we jokingly call her Moss Bowl. And she is just a normal, and she just shed, so she's very beautiful. So she's not any sort of special coloring or anything. Princess, you know she doesn't like you. So this is an example of, does your lizard get along with your pets? My cats are very interested in the lizard. The lizard is not at all interested in the cats, or the snake is not at all interested in the cat, but she's a little bit worried because I know she doesn't like the cats. Blood pythons have a reputation for being very mean and bitey. It's kind of unwarranted. Princess, stop it. Zephyr has actually turned out to be very sweet once we got her enclosure kept right and once we got her tamed down. She snapped at us a couple of times, and she can open her mouth wide enough to fit my wrist in. So I really don't want to find out what it feels like for her to bite me. You can see by her head posture, she's not entirely sure about the cat. She eats about every 2 weeks, and she has a small rat, again, frozen thawed. I prefer not to feed any of my animals live. If they take the frozen, I believe that's the better way to go. Plus, then I don't have to look at the little rodent's eyes and go, I'm sorry, man. Zephyr's favorite thing to do is to sit on your lap and watch TV. She really likes the Addams Family, I think because it's in black and white. Her head shape is different. Most people are familiar with ball pythons. Her head shape is different. It's a little bit more wedge-shaped. It's not as rounded in the snout. And she doesn't have the same sort of nose shape as a ball python does. But as you can see, she's very tolerant to me petting her head. It's only something you should do if you know your snake. Most snakes will not tolerate it. She's gotten used to it because she had some stuck shed and we got to spend some quality time together. This is
Looks
not what I would consider a beginner snake. From the problems I've had, this was my son's first snake actually. And the problems we had getting her enclosure set up, I would definitely say not a first time owner snake. If you want a bigger snake, I would say go with a ball python. They will achieve about the same size, slightly better temperaments, and less rigid requirements.
Katie asked if they can see in color.
Not from what I've read. I actually looked that up when I noticed that she really liked watching the Addams Family. They track more with motion, and there are not a whole lot of studies as to whether they can or cannot see in color. But from what I read, I don't believe they can see in color. And I think the black and white contrast is something that she likes. The blood pythons are a floor-dwelling snake. They get very heavy-bodied, so they don't go in trees. They actually would live in the leaf litter of the forests. And they're opportunistic feeders, which means they just kind of sit there and wait for their prey to come. They don't do a whole lot of active hunting. Unlike the corn snake, that the reason they're called corn snakes is they would live in barns and that and eat the rats that were in farmers' barns. Corn snakes will go out and hunt. Blood pythons are lazy hunters. They'll just sit and wait for their food. That actually refers to the coloring. Their coloring, like I said, she's a normal, and as you can see, it looks like a blood coloring. So that was from their coloring. It had nothing to do with their temperament or anything. Although they're also known as short tails, Sumatras, short tail Borneos. All of those refer to the way their tail is. I know you don't like your tail touched. As you can see, her tail doesn't really taper so much as it just kind of ends. It goes very fat to very thin very quickly. But yeah, the blood just refers to her coloring, this bright red that you're looking for if you have a normal. Although there is a lot of color varieties now that the breeding trade has taken off. She is captive bred. Most bloods now are captive bred. They got their reputation for being crabby from when they were wild trade because they were captured in the wild and then sold in the pet trade. And any wild caught animal is not going to be as tame as a captive bred animal because they're not used to humans. So they got a very bad reputation. I think it's undeserved because she's a sweetheart. And while reptiles and snakes do not have that part of their brain that lets them feel affection, I do think that they learn to recognize their owners, they recognize their voice, they'll learn that they're not a threat. And while they may not exactly cuddle, they know that the human is a nice warm spot. And as you can see, she likes to just sit on my lap, as opposed to Phoenix, who is all over the place. And she'll just stay like this. She's a little bit on the defense with her neck here. She can see the cat. She does not like the cat. But she knows the cat is not allowed by her, so she's okay with the cat. Blood pythons are also known as lazy snakes. Again, they don't like to move a whole lot. They just kind of sit here, which is fine by me because makes a good TV watching companion. Kind of like the bearded dragons that just kind of sit there and hang out. I really like her markings down here. She has a heart. Where did your heart go, baby? One of these is a heart. We found it the other day. This speckling is not dirt. This is actually part of her patterning. She has not had babies. She was actually bought by a breeder who was going to breed her, and he ended up getting out of the breeding business before he bred her. You don't normally breed them until they're closer to full size, so even if she were to breed, she wouldn't be bred for another about 3 years. They need to have a good size. If I were to breed her, I would do what's called power feeding, which means I would start feeding her larger prey animals, so that she would get bigger faster. However, that also shortens their life. So we're doing a bit of power feeding because you can see she's got some spine ridge here, which is just means that she needs a little bit more weight on her. Like I said before, you still want to see a bit of the spine ridge so that you know they're not overweight. One of the ways bloods differ from ball pythons is that bloods keep their fat on the inside, balls have their fat on the outside, so bloods will still feel muscular and not fatty, but that fat is all around their organs. And I didn't catch what Katie asked there.
She said, are they not gravid until they're older?
No, she will not have any sort of eggs or anything till she's older.
And then
So we won't
Darcy
even-
asked, oh, sorry.
What were you saying?
Darcy had asked if you have a favorite. Which pet is your favorite?
Kind of depends on the day. Most days I really like Zelda. She's the one I've had the longest, aside from my cats. Even though she doesn't always like me. I really, really love my alpacas. I have wanted alpacas since I was 16. I actually saved up and bought this house with the acreage so I could have alpacas. But then there's days like today where they're trying to eat my phone that I don't really like them as much. Yeah, it's really hard to say because I love all of them, but I love all of them for different reasons, you know? Like I don't love Zephyr for the same reasons I love Zelda. You know, Zephyr is a very cool snake and she sits on my lap and watches TV, but Zelda likes to wear, well, I don't know that she likes to wear costumes, but she'll wear costumes and she can go places with me where you can't really take a snake out for a walk. Tonks, or Quillington the hedgehog, he hangs out with me every single night in his pouch, so you know we've got a good bond going there. And then my cats, well, they're more dog-like than cat-like, so they're always following me. My son jokingly says that I'm the Pied Piper of cats. When I go into his room, they all follow me.
So besides the animals you've shown us, how many others do you have?
Well, I've got the 3 cats. I've got the 2 freshwater tanks and the 1 saltwater tank, and I've got the other bearded dragon. I think that's everybody. Well, and the chickens and the ducks.
Do you have
Should
any
say
baby
everybody.
chicks?
No baby chicks this year. I had a surprise batch last year when I thought one of my oldest hens disappeared. She was 7 years old at the time, and she disappeared. So I thought she had passed away and crawled under the coop to pass away because she was old. And then she reappeared about 3 weeks later with 2 baby chicks. Those were her illegal baby chicks. So my coop is pretty much at capacity right now. I don't like to overstock it. I like everybody to have enough room. So I just got her chicks and then some other chicks that I took in last year. So I had a total of 7 new ones last year. So we've got a pretty good laying flock going right now. My oldest hens are 8 years old this year. My youngest ones are just a couple of months old. So it's a good mixed flock. I'm getting 8 to 10 eggs a day, so they're feeding us well. And the eggs are fertilized because I do have a rooster. However, I have never cracked one open and found a baby chick. That's one of those misconceptions that you're going to find that with fertilized eggs. It doesn't happen. It takes 21 days for that egg to get to be the baby chick. So it's doubtful that you'd actually have that happen. Where are you going, sweetheart?
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us and showing us your pets. We're at 3:18 right now, so I didn't know how long you wanted to go. If you felt like you showed everybody. Does anybody have any other questions?
Nose boop. Well, I appreciate you giving me the chance to do this. It was a lot of fun. My first time doing a Zoom tour, so that was kind of cool.
Well, thank you. We've enjoyed it very much.
You're welcome.
Although I know the snakes are making my mom and my sister probably a little squeamish.
Well, I mean, we can go with the fish tank instead. We got that one, and then I've got my saltwater nano that I'm working on.
Is that the one with the shrimp?
Yep. My hand-fed shrimp that comes up to the top to eat. His name is Pierre.
Oh my gosh, it looks like it has googly eyes.
He kind of does. One cool thing that I've got going in this tank, where'd you guys go? So I've got an anemone in here, and I've got my shrimp and all of my snails, but I needed fish. So that particular fish, you might notice, is a black molly, which is commonly a freshwater fish. But you can acclimate them to saltwater. And what my mollies are doing, I've got 2 of them in here, is they are doing what's called cycling the tank, which means they're just in there being fish. And they're getting the tank cycled so I can get my live rock up and running and my sand up and running and all the good bacteria going in there. And then the mollies will be transferred back to freshwater. And then I can get some pretty saltwater fish in here. But this way you're not risking an expensive saltwater fish to get your tank primed. And the mollies get to have an undersea adventure.
Oh, wow. So I think it's really cute. Katie says that the shrimp creeps her out. Like, the snakes didn't bother her. She loved them. But
The
that
snake-
googly-eyed shrimp who looks like a cartoon character creeps her out.
I don't know. This I think is the creepiest thing I own.
Do those things bite?
No, they sting.
Oh, that's what I
the-
meant.
Yeah, that's the anemone from like the same one that Finding Nemo has. It's a bubble tip anemone. He's not doing too well. He's not supposed to be white. So we're trying to nurse him back to health, but yeah, that's probably the creepiest thing I own, because that thing, it moves, it walks on the rocks, it folds itself inside out. It's weird. It's cool, but it's weird. Oh yeah, Katie, that shrimp does look like a giant spider, and honestly freaked me out when I first got the tank, because with all of his antenna and everything, he just looks like, what are you doing, Zephyr? He just looks like he's a giant spider, but he's actually really sweet, and he comes up to the top of the tank and eats right from my hands. So, and he's a skunk striped spider, or skunk striped shrimp, and we'll get to about twice that size.
So what do shrimps eat?
He'll eat just about everything. He's trying to eat the molly right now. I actually feed him saltwater mix. It's got brine shrimp and mitosis, or not mitosis, meiosis. No, some sort of other little shrimp, and it also has bloodworms and some seaweed in there, and he likes that. He also likes to steal the freshwater pellets that the mollies get. He will actually flip himself upside down at the top of the tank and steal them from the top of the water because he's a brat. There you go. Focus in on one of my snails here.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he definitely has a personality. It's kind of funny. I did not think I would be that invested in a shrimp. And
Now that is not the same kind of shrimp that you would eat if you went out to have seafood.
no, that is not. That's a reef shrimp. I'm not quite sure what the eating shrimp is, but he wouldn't get big enough to eat, so.
Now I do see a little bit of spider in him now that Katie mentions it.
And this is my 10-gallon with my Dumbo-eared beta in it. I've also got some rasboras you can see kind of playing over here. And there's an albino pleco. He's hanging out right here. He's actually doubled in size in the 2 weeks he's been in my tank. He's mostly here to clean the tank and grow out, and then he'll be moved to a different tank. But when people ask what size tank you should keep a beta in, it's not a 1-gallon tank. They do best in bigger tanks. I have never had tarantulas or any sort of spiders or scorpions or anything like that. They actually freak me out. We are supposed to be getting tarantulas and that for sale at work at some point. And I told my boss that they need to be locked in a cage so I don't have to deal with them, because I don't know that I could even look at them or feed them. And now I'm not going to be able to unsee the whole spider thing with my shrimp, so.
Now wait a minute, what did you call this beta?
This is a Dumbo-eared beta, and I'm wondering who's been picking at his fins now, because his one fin is kind of raggedy there. See right there? The rasboras picking on you? Or are you trying to beat up on them? So the Dumbo ear refers to the front fins. You see how big they are compared to normal betas? And they get very ragged looking because these guys are very derpy and can't swim very well. And so he drags himself across the plants all the time. And they end up looking like sort of veily shredded gauze. And betas are known as Siamese fighting fish. You can only keep one male in a tank. However, if you got females, you can keep several females in a tank. It's called a sorority tank. These guys are the Harlequin rasboras. They're just a small schooling fish to add interest to the tank. They're supposed to school. Nobody told them that. They haven't quite figured it out yet. The albino pleco, Plecoscamus. This is just an albino version. They grow up to 6 inches, so this one will not be staying in my tank. He's just kind of here to clean it, and then in a little while he'll get moved out, probably traded in for a smaller one. Betas are actually very intelligent. You can train them to jump through hoops. You can train them to do tricks. They'll eat from your hands if you work with them. This guy will come up to the top. He won't eat from my hand yet, but I've only had him a couple of months. And I wouldn't teach him to jump through a hoop just simply because I'd be afraid his fins would get caught.
So do you have plans to get any other pets?
Not right now. I work at a pet store, so I have the advantage of pretty much any pet I'd want, I get to take care of and, you know, work on training them and taming them. So that's kind of nice, because after working all day and coming home, I barely want to take care of mine.
How long does it take you to, on a daily basis, to, do all your pet related chores?
It's about an hour every day between everybody, getting their food prepped, getting whatever needs to be cleaned up, getting them fed and watered and that sort of stuff. Every Sunday is cage cleaning day, where I go through and I do my water changes on my tanks, and I do the deep cleans on all the tanks. The hedgehog's tank is a daily cage cleaning day. The alpacas, they get raked, and their yard gets raked and scooped about every week in the summertime. Obviously, in the wintertime, you don't do it because it freezes. The chicken coop gets cleaned out. It gets a big clean in the spring. So I'll do a deep clean here as soon as it's warm enough. I do what's called a deep litter method, which means that it'll break down into compost in there. So I don't have to do much cleaning in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, I'll do a little bit of cleaning, but not a whole lot. I usually just turn it over, but they spend most of their time outside anyways. So there's not a whole lot to clean. I do another clean out in there in the fall so that I can get it ready for winter. But then there's your, daily, you got to clean food dishes and water dishes and make sure everybody's got food, and, clean litter boxes for the cats. I've got 2 long-haired cats, so they get daily brushings. Well, the one gets daily brushings, the other one gets when I can catch her brushings. You get your nail clipping that you need to do on all of them. Honestly, the snakes are the easiest. They get fed about every week to 2 weeks. Their water gets changed daily, but for the most part, there's not much else to clean. They don't poop every day, so that's not an issue. And so you just get to play with them a lot more than you have to do cleaning. I'd say the most work and the most stress is my saltwater tank. Since that needs water changes every week, specialized food, and testing every couple of days as I try to get it balanced. When you're doing fish tanks, it's a challenge to do a 10-gallon tank. These are considered nano tanks. Do the snakes get defensive when you try to move their shed? Only if you have to pull it off of their head. Like Zephyr had some stuck on her head, and so I had to actually soak her and get that off. She got a little bit upset like that. Other than that, they just it comes off, and they just leave it and you pick it up. So like, this is Phoenix's collection of shed. So this is the corn snakes. Zephyr doesn't shed in one nice big piece like this most of the time, so hers aren't as nice. But he just leaves this long thing laying in his cage.
Does it kind of feel like when you have glue on your hands and you peel it off?
No, it's a little bit crunchier. I don't know if you can. It's almost like, onion skin paper?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it feels like.
Oh, Darcy wants to see.
Axolotl?
Yeah. Well, he reminds me of a sea monkey.
I'm going to grab his food, see if he'll come up and eat for us.
What do you call those little pink things that are straggling off him?
Those are his gills. That's actually how he breathes. So we'll see if we can get a good video of this. Come here, buddy. So we've got an earthworm here. This is his favorite food. Where are you? Come on. Where'd you go? There you go. You just swallowed that thing whole. And he'll come beg for more.
Well, Well, now I'm gonna have to see you feed the shrimp.
Let's see if he'll do his upside down trick, because that's pretty cool. Come here, buddy. So he comes right up to my hand. Oh, my camera's on the other side. That's why it's doing that.
They're not able to bite you, are they?
Nope. Come on. You gonna come up? He's like, maybe. Come on. Do your upside down trick. Come here. Nope, he just cleans my fingers. He's gonna use me to get up to the top. He's like, I don't know what you're doing. It's not food time.
He does seem to have
There he
whiskers
goes.
like a cat. Oh, he's upside down.
Yep. He goes on the surface till he grabs a pellet, and then he drops.
I can't get over the googly eyes.
Like, I want to hang out in the back here. I saw an adult one the other day, and they're huge. There you Pierre. You're just hiding behind the rock, so I can't even see you. Well, Zephyr.
So do your snakes ever go in water?
Nope, they actually don't really like the water. I've never had to put Phoenix in the water, but Zephyr I've had to soak, and she really does not like it. Well, I had the tank open here. She was very curious, but decided she didn't really want to go in it.
It's hard to tell, but how long is the body of the shrimp?
He fits about to here on my finger, so probably
Oh,
about
wow.
an inch. He can get up to 3 inches.
Oh, wow.
There he goes upside down again. He's going up the side. You going upside down? Going upside down where nobody can see you, man. There he goes. Hey, he's doing his good job cleaning everything.
There was a question. Do you have any birds besides chickens and ducks?
I don't. I had parakeets, but I have a barn cat that has become a house cat, and she pretty much terrorizes anything that she thinks is edible. So I choose not to keep birds in my house at this time. I've also had cockatiels growing up, so I've had birds in the past. It's just not fair to have a cat staring at the bird all the time, especially as the bird's out too much. I always thought it would be cool to have an African gray because they are very smart birds. They also live a long time and get kind of fussy if they're with different people. I do have the ducks with the chickens. Those are kind of an interesting experiment. Yeah, when I had the parakeets, my outdoor cat actually hid underneath the couch when we thought she was outside and snatched one of the parakeets mid-air. And luckily was tame enough that I was able to get the parakeet back from her. And the parakeet then had to be washed off because cat saliva is toxic to birds. And the parakeet survived, lived with us for several more years. But I don't want to put any other bird through that again. And I had to have zap mats around the cage and to keep the outdoor cat kitten from going on the cage. My other house cats were pretty good about leaving them alone, but you huffing at me, baby? Oh, are there any other questions? No, my cats just watch the fish. They actually have enjoyed it since I moved the freshwater tank down to the bottom here. Um, they'll just sit and watch them. They don't really swat at the glass for the fish. They really, really like swatting at the glass of the corn snake's cage. So I had to put a second, I put the cage actually in a cabinet to keep them from bothering him. The blood python doesn't cruise out enough for them to bother them. And they'll sit and watch the hedgehog, but they have learned not to touch the hedgehog. I'd have to say my cats are pretty well behaved. All three of them were former barn cats. So all three of them were kittens raised outside. So that's why they like to bat at the snake and that. They've learned not to bat at the hedgehog because they have hit the hedgehog and the hedgehog has spiked their paws, which is pretty much the best way to keep a cat from hurting your hedgehog. They batted at it in a playful way and got stabbed, and now they just sit and watch. But my cats are fairly well trained. I can sit here. I've been sitting on the floor here playing with all of these animals. My cats are actually out of the frame right now watching, but they know not to come over and not to bother the snakes when mom's got them out, and not to bother the hedgehog. But again, that takes a lot of positive reinforcement and training and knowing your pets. My outdoor cat, the feral one kitten, she's been locked outside because you can't really trust her around the snakes and that. She gets a little bit too curious and she gets a little bit too close. So when they're out and about, I usually try to make sure she's outside. Sounds like your cats really are curious.
Well, thank you, Jenna. I didn't know we were going to keep you as long as we have, but it's been fascinating.
Well, I'm glad everybody's been enjoying it. Figure we gotta end on a shot of Spyro, my other bearded dragon. He is definitely a male, and he is about 1.5 years old. Here he is sunbathing with his sexy leg out. He's a lot chubbier than Zelda, too. Well, thank you all for coming. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if I can figure out how to do this, I will stop the recording. It's